In this video, we're going over two really neat features inside Premiere Pro that can help you level up your effects game, and those are nested sequences and adjustment layers. Nested sequences you can think of as sort of like a little package that you can put clips in. And once they're inside this package, Premiere treats the whole thing as a brand new clip. Let me explain. What you want to do is highlight several clips or right-click on one and then choose Nest. It's going to create a whole brand new sequence that's going to store your clip. And essentially what Premiere does is it takes the clips or the clip that you highlighted and puts it in this package, and this package stores those clips in another sequence. These clips are all unchanged. The reason I like to think of it as a package is you can open it up, pull the clips out, and put new clips in. Once the clips are nested, Premiere will treat it as a brand new clip, as if you've literally exported these clips as a video and then brought it back into Premiere. What this means is you can add brand new effects to that clip as if nothing has happened before. Now, as an added bonus, because when you add effects to a nested sequence, they only affect the packaging and it only looks like they're affecting the clips within, you can actually change the clips inside a nested sequence after you've applied an effect, and that effect will modify the clips inside that nested sequence. So let's hop into Premiere. I'm going to show you an example where we can actually add a fake camera shake to stable shots using nested sequences. Sometimes you want to add fake camera shake to a locked off shot to give it more of an organic feel. This is the walking shot I used last episode in the masking example, and I want to add a fake camera shake so that it feels as if someone else was filming this video. We can do this with a nested sequence. Let me show you. Over here I've got a client video that I have permission to use in this tutorial that has a little bit of camera shake. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this clip down to the same size as my walking clip, then I'm going to put it into a nested sequence. And that is the package where our clip is stored. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually stabilize the client footage using Warp Stabilizer, but we're going to stabilize it through the lens of the nested sequence. So this effect is only going to apply to the package. Once the effect is on, it'll analyze frame by frame to see how this clip moves, and it'll learn how to actually stabilize it. What Premiere is doing is basically going to be warping this clip so that it looks like it's stable based on the movement from this specific clip. However, if we were to replace the clip inside this nested sequence, those same distortions will still apply to that package, which means we can actually add a fake camera shake to any clip we add into this nested sequence after adding Warp Stabilizer. So as you can see, once I throw my walking shot into this sequence, we now have a fake camera shake on a locked off shot, which is super cool and I think demonstrates very accurately the power of nested sequences. Adjustment layers are a whole different ballgame. They act more like a filter inside your timeline, and what they will do is the effects you apply to an adjustment layer will affect all of the clips below it in your timeline. This is great for things like a literal filter in your video, like a color grade or cinematic bars, but it can also be used for short little things like video transitions. If you have multiple layers in your timeline, you want to transition them with like a swoosh transition like this one, you can actually do that using adjustment layers. So let me hop into Premiere Pro and we'll show you how to add a simple whip pan transition to your video using adjustment layers. To do this, I've got two clips in my timeline that I want to transition between. With our clips in the timeline, let's add an adjustment layer. Do this by clicking on New Item, then scrolling up to Adjustment Layer, and usually Premiere's default settings for your new adjustment layer will match the sequence, so go ahead and hit OK. But we're actually going to find the area where these two clips are cut between using the down arrow key. Then we're going to use our arrow keys to shift 6 frames to the left, then drag our adjustment layer in to match our playhead, hit down again, shift 6 frames to the right, drag our adjustment layer there, and now our filter is going to cover just the few frames around where that cut happens. What we're going to do is we're going to create a distortion effect that achieves its maximum amount of distortion right at that cut, which will effectively hide it from our viewer, creating a more seamless transition between these two clips. Now let's add an offset effect. As you can see in the Effects Control tab, offset basically changes the position of the clip on the screen, but allows it to wrap around. To achieve a full whip pan, we want to set the shift center to -960. This means the clip will completely exit the screen, allowing the second clip to come all the way on, and once we add some blur and distortion, the cut will be virtually invisible. So go ahead and add a keyframe for its current position at the beginning of the animation, then add a keyframe for -960 at the end of the animation. The last thing we're going to do is ease in for the first keyframe, then ease out for the end keyframe to give the motion a bit more of an organic feel. Now what we want to do is add a directional blur, which is basically the first step into distorting our image and hiding that cut. Make sure the blur direction is set to 90, which is effectively horizontal. Then what we want to do is we want to keyframe the animation of the blur so that the image starts out not blurred at all and then hits maximum blur right at the cut. This is going to help us achieve that smooth transition look that will hide the cut from the viewer. So let's find the point where the cut occurs. At this point, let's ramp up the blur. This looks about good, and then add a keyframe. Now, we want to basically move our playhead left and right, and at both points, set the blur back down to 0 by hitting the reset button, and then drag those keyframes to the edges of the clip. Just like before, let's ease in our first keyframe, ease out our last keyframe, and for the middle keyframe, we're going to add a new kind of temporal interpolation called Auto Bezier. We can play that back, and it looks pretty good, nice and smooth, and the cut is fairly hidden. But the animation looks unfinished because it feels slow, it feels a little unpolished, so we're going to add another layer to this distortion. And for this, we need a second adjustment layer. Go ahead and make a copy of our first adjustment layer by dragging a new one over top. Then drag the edges in to match the bottom layer. On this layer, we're going to be adding a lens distortion effect to kind of complete and polish our whip pan transition. Lens distortion can be found in the Effects tab, and as you'll see, the only property we're working with here is the curvature. The curvature causes the clip to be basically curved in 3 dimensions in our preview window, and a negative curvature basically brings the edges out towards the screen. This causes the clip to look as if it was filmed with a fisheye or wide-angle lens, giving it that curved distortion along the edges. We're going to animate this distortion, having it ramp up from 0 at the beginning of the clip, max out for a few frames towards the middle of the animation, and then ramp back down before the transition is over. This will kind of add an extra accent to our directional blur and whip pan, and make the effect altogether look more professional. So let's go about 1 frame in from the beginning, add a keyframe where the curvature is 0. Then let's find the cut, shift a little bit over, and put our curvature to something like -60. That looks pretty good. Now, let's just mirror these keyframes on the other side of the cut. But we're not quite done yet. The last thing we need to do is add a keyframe hold to the first keyframe where we achieve our maximum distortion. Sometimes Premiere likes to have wiggle between the 2 keyframes if they're the same value, so adding a keyframe hold makes sure that these values stay the same between these 2 keyframes. Sure enough, we play it back, and the transition looks really sick. Our clips warp and switch, and the cut is pretty much invisible. So that's how you use nested sequences and adjustment layers to really level up your effects game inside Premiere. For more practice with effects, check out the video right here, and I'll see you there.